it's kind of important to remember that there are different deadlines, and it's just there's a deadline for admissions, there's a deadline for maybe a scholarship application, there's a deadline for the FAFSA form, there's a deadline for New York State aid. So it's really important to kind of keep an eye on all the different schools. And so I tell students sometimes it's really good to make like a Excel spreadsheet, and maybe the different schools that you're going to, or even within, if you have a list of all the different applications out there and what those deadlines are, because you don't want to miss a deadline, because unfortunately there are so many different ones. So you want to be mindful of that. One thing that I will share is for financial aid here at Stony Brook, our priority deadline is February 15th. So you want to make sure that you get that submitted as soon as possible. Applying by February 15th does allow you to be considered for what's called campus-based aid, which I will go over in a couple of slides. The forms that kind of are out there that you may have heard that are kind of the most popular, I would say, forms that you're going to be filling out. It's going to start with the FAFSA form. So the FAFSA form does stand for the free application for federal student aid. Here at Stony Brook, we would advise that all students kind of complete that. It's not a requirement to complete the FAFSA form, but it is the start. So if you are looking for Excelsior, if you're looking for New York State aid, yes, you are going to be required to do that FAFSA form first. So you want to make sure that you get that in as soon as possible. We get a lot of questions on the CSS profile. So the CSS profile does stand for College Scholarship Service Profile. Here at Stony Brook, we do not use a CSS profile. CSS profile, you are most likely going to find at a lot of private institutions. And what they use that form for is their institutional dollars. And so we don't use it here at Stony Brook. So we get a lot of questions of how do I fill it out? Who do I send it to? Not here at Stony Brook. So one less form that you have to fill out. So yay. On top of that, if you're a New York State resident, you want to make sure you're completing your Express TAP application. That is considered like the New York State application. So if you're looking to apply for Excelsior, if you're looking to apply for STEM, if you're looking to apply for all the other scholarships that they have out there, you do have to complete that state application first. And so you want to make sure that you're completing that as well. And then last, there may be some institutional forms that may need to be completed. In some situations, maybe the FAFSA form does require you to provide some extra documentation. We'll request that on your solar account if that documentation is needed, but that could be another form that you have to submit. So how do you start? It does start with the FAFSA form. And as I mentioned before, I do hope that, so I realized I did not update this slide for you guys. I apologize. I'm actually kind of mortified. You guys are going to be completing the 2026-27 FAFSA form that is available. It did become live. October 1st was a new law that it has to be and it was actually out a little bit earlier this year. So yay, compared to last year, that's fantastic. But you do go on to what's called studentaid.gov. That is the website to complete the FAFSA form. It is free, so please make sure that you're completing the free application for federal student aid. If for some reason you get to the end of the application and it is asking you to make a payment, you are not on the right site, abort, email us and we'll give you the right email address, the right website to apply. From there, I will say, if you have not, make sure you do that first. Do the FAFSA form as soon as possible. And before you do the FAFSA form, you do have to complete what's called your FSA ID, so your Federal Student Aid ID. So you're going to hold on to that. The student needs one and the parent needs one as well to help complete the FAFSA form. And the reason for that is that each person for the FAFSA form is considered a contributor. And so if you are a dependent student on the FAFSA form, you are required to put your parents' information on there. One question that we get is, well, what happens if my parents are separated? Who do I put on there? For divorced parents, not divorced and separated parents that are not living together. So keyword, they are not living together. You need to put the contributor, so the parent of record is going to be whoever's providing more financial support over the past 12 months. Sometimes you get a question of, I don't know which one to pick. Everything's equal. The easiest way to do is to take an Excel spreadsheet. I love Excel. Take an Excel spreadsheet, write it down. I'm sure it's not 50-50. And then you'll put whoever's support has been the most over the past 12 months. So one of the big questions that we do get is, what does it mean when they say contributor, and that they need to provide their consent? And so what the contributor is providing consent for, and the students providing consent for, is for the Department of Education to touch base with the IRS to pull in that information from your taxes. So whether it's going to be you did file a tax return, whether it's going to be that you did file a tax return, didn't file a tax return, all that information gets pulled in if you're able to do that, and then it gets put onto the FAFSA form, and that's what you're providing consent for. On here, You'll notice that there are people who can be contributors and cannot. The can be, those are kind of the easier ones. It's going to be the student. If the student happens to be married, the student's spouse has to be a biological or adoptive parent. And then if the parents did separate and remarry, it's going to be the parent, spouse, or the step parent. What is not a contributor? So it's something to keep in mind that it's not a grandparent. You can't put your sister on there, no uncles, unless they are your biological, they are your adoptive parent, which in some cases they are. You would let us know. One of the big things, legal guardians are not on there. There is a question on the FAFSA form that says if you are in legal guardianship, you would have court documentation to support that. On that form, you're not going to be putting your legal guardian on there. It's just going to be your information. If you have specific questions about are you independent, not independent, we're happy to answer those. But what's really awesome is the FAFSA form does really lay that out there of what's considered independent, dependent. And so I would highly advise taking a look at the FAFSA website and reading through those guidelines if you have any confusion. But definitely, we are here to help answer those questions if you have any. So who gets federal aid? It's kind of a big question that we get. So basically the question that I start with is what are the eligibility requirements for financial aid? That's really the question that should be asked. And so without, getting too technical, federal student aid is eligibility determined by several factors. So it does require a student to be a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen status. They have to be enrolled in an eligible degree or certificate program. And so that means that you're going towards a degree. You have to maintain satisfactory academic progress. The easiest way to explain that is the Department of Education is providing you funds to help you graduate college, help you get through college. They expect you to be making forward progress. So that could mean, you have to earn a certain number of credits each semester. You have to required to have a certain GPA. So GPA is typically a 2.0 at the end of each, as a cumulative GPA is required. In some situations, you may have to demonstrate financial need. I will go over in a couple of slides what that financial need means and how it is actually determined and how it can vary from school to school. Financial need could be based on if you're eligible for the Pell Grant. It could be based on if you're eligible for a subsidized loan, some need-based scholarships. And so there's different criteria that are out there, and I'll kind of go over those. And then you can't be on default on a student loan, those kind of things. But there are a big question that we get is what's considered an eligible non-citizen. Again, I go back to the easiest thing is if you look at this website, the studentaid.gov/eligibility, they do a great job of explaining what those different requirements are, what those different statuses are, and then they go into what detail, maybe what documentation may need to be submitted to each institution in order to move forward with the financial aid process. So we do get a lot of questions from our international students. And so if we do have any international students on this call, this slide is specifically for you. So while international students are not eligible for federal and state aid, they are eligible to enroll in the school's time option payment plan. There is a scholarship opportunity for incoming international students to apply for. The easiest way is to take a look at our website. I know that I'm directing you to the website, but the advisor in our office who's responsible for our website does such an awesome job, and he works really hard on it, so it's nice and clear. So I am directing you there because I promise you're going to find your answers. But if you need clarification, please give us a call. But international students, please take a look at this website. We list what the scholarship opportunities out there, and we also do provide on that website some private loan lenders that may be that do lend to international students. So definitely take a look at that website for further information. And as always, you can always give us a call and we're happy to go over that with you. Oh, did I just skip a slide? I did. So free help, I go back to it's free. Please, it pains my heart when I hear people say, I paid someone to do the FAFSA form for me. You could have you take that money, it can go towards books. You can take that money, it can go towards gas. Any school that you go to, in financial aid, we are here to help you. So if you get stuck on the FAFSA form, we can help. If you get stuck on the FAFSA form, you can call federal aid. You can probably even go to your guidance counselor and they can help you. They have so many workshops. I know SUNY's getting ready to have their SUNY Day, and where you should be able, you have a link and they have financial aid advisors readily on call to help with any questions that you may have. We are here to help answer those questions. So please, 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 I ask everybody that's on this call today, if you are eligible to fill out a FAFSA form, please promise me that you will not pay someone. I will not be very happy, and I'm a happy person. So please make sure you're not paying. It's definitely free application for federal student aid to make sure that you are not making any payments. Um, so what is federal aid? So I want to go into specifically the next couple of slides are going to be geared towards the federal aid that's out there. So this is all funding that stems from completing the FAFSA form. So we don't know any eligibility for federal aid until you complete the federal form, and that is the FAFSA form. So what is it? So there are several different types of financial aid that can help kind of reduce your overall cost when you're attending the university. So I'll start with self-help aid. So self-help aid is going to include those work opportunities. It's going to be your loans. And it's called self-help because the individual takes responsibility for receiving this type of aid. So if you think about it, the individual is taking that responsibility for the loan, they're signing that master promissory note stating that they know that it has to be repaid. The federal work study, if you're eligible for work study, the student is taking that responsibility to work those hours and then they earn those funds. And so it's still a type of aid that can help you pay for your college. And it's through, like I said, it's through work, it's through the loans. And on the other side, you have your gift aid. So your gift aid is going to include your scholarships and grants because they typically don't have to be repaid. And so a scholarship is, it's an award that's intended to help with education. It's established, it could be established, the eligibility is established by the donor or it could be by the school's criteria. And so there's different scholarship opportunities that are out there. I'll go into it a little bit how Stony Brook works as far as their merit-based scholarships. On top of that, there are grants. And so grants are going to be more along the lines of awards that are offered by federal, state. They tend to be for most like grants. I would say you probably want to complete the FAFSA form because that's going to it's need based. I would say grants are more considered on a need based level. And then, as I mentioned before, the loans for self help. I'm going to go into the different types in a couple of slides. So before we can get into the different sources, I think it's important to know when I start talking about the awards that require need, I think it's really important to explain how need is determined in the financial aid world. And it's actually a really simple formula. Simple math, which is awesome because for those of you who may not be good at math, like myself, this is an easy formula for us to follow along. So the easiest thing is it's your cost of attendance, which I will dive into in a couple in the next slide. And then they take your student aid index, that's going to give you your financial need. So example, if your cost of attendance is 25,000 for the year and your student aid index is 25,000 for the year, you're likely not to qualify for a subsidized loan. However, if your cost of attendance is 25,000 for the year and your SAI is 5,000, you're likely to qualify for a subsidized loan. So it's something just to keep in mind of how that's determined. But I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into kind of what the cost of attendance is, what it's made up of, and then kind of how it can vary from school to school, meaning that your aid may change from school to school. So cost of attendance is the amount that it is estimated that it's going to cost you to go to school. And so with that, you're going to have your direct costs. So those are going to be along the lines of your tuition and fees, your room and your board if you're living on campus. So if you think of direct costs, those are going to be the costs that you are typically going to see on your bill, the things that you're billed for. So like I said, tuition fees, your meal plan, and your housing if you're living on campus. On the other side, with education, going to school, it does cost money. There are other expenses that you're going to incur while you're in school, while the student's in school, that you are going to have to come up with. So that could be, if you're a commuter student, you have to transportation going back and forth. Even if you're an out-of-state student, international student, you're going back and forth, and those are expenses that you have. And so we're required to come up with an estimated amount that on average our students are spending, so we know how much what their cost of attendance is going to be. Books and supplies, you're going to need books for classes, you're going to need supplies, binders, loose leaf notebooks, calculators, all those things. And again, we take an on average of what that cost is going to be, and we put that into the cost of attendance. And then I say miscellaneous expenses, personal expenses. And so I don't know, you're getting ready to go to college. I have a 13-year-old at home. Hopefully when he goes to college, he does use, laundry detergent to wash his clothes. Those are part of personal expenses. And so you do need those kind of supplies. Hopefully, you're washing your clothes. I pray that my kid is washing his clothes by the time he goes to college. And so we are required to put that in that cost of attendance. And so it's really important that when we do start sending out those those award notifications to you, we are going to have another webinar and we go line by line kind of what the cost of attendance is, what it's built up of, because it can kind of get confusing because some parents and families want to know just the bottom line. I just want to know what I'm going to be billed for and then what I'm going to pay. Others want to know, well, I need to know the entire cost so I have an understanding of how much I need to put aside or how much I need to take out in a loan, because I know that I'm going to need additional funding for transportation, books, and supplies. And so I urge you to, when we have that webinar, definitely come in. watch that. Come and listen. You can listen to me speak, and then we're going to go over that. But it is important to know that the cost of attendance is just that. It's a cost of attendance for the entire academic year. It is based on average costs, and there are two components of the direct and indirect costs that are going to be listed there. So on top of that, there's for those of you who completed the FAFSA form, which I'm hoping at this point is everybody. So that when you completed your FAFSA form, they gave you this confirmation code and this confirmation page, and they gave you this student aid index. So in financial aid, we have so many acronyms. So we say SAI, so cost of attendance COA, FAFSA for free application for federal student aid. SAI is the student aid index. So the student aid index is an eligibility index number that financial aid offices use to determine how much federal aid the student would receive if they were to attend that school. And so it's important to understand that with that SAI, it's going to remain constant no matter what school you go to. Doesn't matter. Your cost of attendance is going to vary because that's going to depend on what school. That is going to depend on what the cost of the school that the school is. It is also important to understand that the student aid index is not what you're going to pay to go to college. It is not what it's not. So if you have a negative 1,500, that doesn't mean that you're going to automatically get money back at every institution that you apply for. Negative 1,500, you're likely to qualify for the maximum federal Pell Grant, but it does not mean that that's what you're going to pay. So it's really, really important that you understand that the student aid index is calculated from the FAFSA form to help basically determine what your aid's going to be as far as are you eligible for a federal Pell Grant? Are you eligible for a subsidized loan? That's what we use that student aid index for. And so how it's easier to explain, oh, sorry, I forgot. It's broken down into two parts. And so you'll notice when you do the FAFSA form, the student has their section and the parent has their section. And that's because they're taking the student's contribution, parents' contribution, and that's what creates that overall SAI. So it's not moving. There we go. So this is a great visual as far as showing you the variable costs, for a cost of attendance. So I always say one could be a private institution, two is going to be your state institution, three is going to be more of your community colleges. So it ranges as far as the cost, but you notice your SAI remains the same, doesn't change. So at school one, maybe school one and two, maybe you qualify for a subsidized loan. But school three, you won't because your need is a little bit less because remember that cost is less. So if your SAI remains the same, cost goes down, you may have a very, as far as the need-based aid that you may qualify for. Specifically, I always say that's to focus on that as a subsidized loan. So when you get your financial aid award notifications, you may have some that say that you're getting a subsidized loan and others you're only getting unsubsidized. That could be based on the need and the student aid index and the cost of attendance with the school. So it's really important to kind of, when you're looking at that and comparing schools, to look at that bottom line number. And as I mentioned before, we go into net costs and bottom line numbers and what the value is of the institution. We will talk more about that when we're talking about reviewing your award notification. This presentation specifically is just to kind of give you an idea of when you see that SAI, know that that's not how much you're necessarily going to pay. It's what is used to help determine what aid you are eligible for. So with that, where's all this financial aid coming from? What options do I have? So there are gift aid and self-help aid, but where is it coming from? Where can I look for, different types of aid? So when there are federal, state, your colleges, there's so many different sources in which you can look into. And I advise students to really take a look out there. So the FAFSA form, you got your state aid. Obviously, you're going to apply to the institution. As far as colleges and universities, scholarships are going to change. Some require applications for their scholarships, some don't. I'm going to go over that in a little bit for Stony Brook. The private sources, so the external scholarships that are out there, I really, really advise taking a good hard look to see what's out there. There are so many options out there. And some students are like, well, it takes so long and I'm only going to get, $250. I'm only going to get $500. Calculate how long it took you to write an application. I can guarantee you have like a template already of what you're writing as far as scholarship application wise. If you're taking that, maybe it takes you an hour to submit an application. And I feel like that's longer than it really is. But if I could get paid $500 an hour, I would do that. So I highly, highly recommend that you're looking at those external scholarships. There are so many different websites out there. So FastWeb being one of them. That's external scholarship website that you can kind of you can put your information in. They kind of ask you some general questions, and then everything that you put in there, they send you email after email saying, hey, you may qualify for this scholarship, you may want to apply for this scholarship. A couple of things, or a couple of tips I would say, if you are choosing to go through the fast web, where you're looking at those external scholarship search engines, is one, I suggest creating like a separate email address to just have them flood your email, because you don't want to miss important emails, especially this time with all the deadlines being different and different applications and different things having to be submitted. Use a separate email just to get flooded with the different scholarships that you may be eligible for, to apply for, I should say. But then when you get ready to apply for them, maybe that's when you use the email address that you check maybe on a regular basis. And this way your email's not getting flooded, you're not missing out on anything. And then the other tip that I have is, when you're applying for a scholarship, you should not be paying to apply for a scholarship. I go back to, you can use those funds for a book. You can use those funds to help pay for gas. You should not, if you are applying for a scholarship, you should not be paying to apply. So please, because I've seen students do that before. And again, it hurts my heart. I don't want you to do that. For employers, so if you as a family member, either if the student is working or if the parent is working as part of a union, check your union, see if there's any applications available to apply for. Check with your schools. There are a lot of schools this time of year. High schools are giving out those scholarships. There's a lot of local organizations, Rotary clubs, churches, synagogues. There's so many different opportunities out there as far as religious organizations that are offering scholarships. It can't hurt. And I tell students, even if you apply for 15 scholarships, if you only get one, that's better than nothing. And you got to be in it to win it. So submit those applications. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer those. But it really is important to know that there's so many different sources out there, and you are most likely going to be required to complete an application for each one of those sources, but it can't hurt. We had a work study student years ago complete, I think we told him, for your shift, apply for as many scholarships as you can, and let's see what happens. And they were applying, and they were on shift for maybe about 2 hours, and they, did a good 25 applications, I remember. They heard back from two, and it ended up being like $750. And they were like, wow, I had no idea that was out there. That 750 they were able to use towards their book. So that's $750 less, just because they took, like I said, 2 hours of their time. And they got to do it at work. So that's cool. So now I'm going to dive into the specific awards that are out there for federal aid, and then I'll go into state aid as well. So federal work study is a federal student aid program for students that provides part-time employment while a student is enrolled in school, and it's to help pay for the educational expenses. One question that we get is, does work study have to be repaid? No, it's considered self-help aid, so you get paid for the hours that you work. It is considered campus-based funding. And so what campus-based funding means is that the Department of Education gives each school a pot of money and then says, please give this out to your students, give this out to your neediest of students. Unfortunately, it depends on our funding, and we're not able to offer it to all of the students who may qualify for work study. So one of the best ways to make sure that you at least get considered for that funding is to make sure that you complete that FAFSA form as early as possible, and definitely by our priority deadline. And you want to make sure that you get all the documentation in as soon as possible, so when we do that first round of packaging, you are part of that. Because what happens is once we do that first round of packaging, we don't have enough to package for the next round. There's no work study left. The one thing I also will add is that even if you don't get federal work study, there are many opportunities on campus to also work on campus. So don't think that because you don't get federal work study, you're not able to work on campus. It's just going to be a different type of position. You can still work on campus. And then the other thing is that these funds are, like I said, these funds are limited, and you want to make sure that you file by the priority deadline, because funding is, as I just said, is limited. So the federal grants, when you fill out the FAFSA form, these are the two grants that are offered through the Department of Education. Ooh, that was weird. I didn't even touch anything. The Department of Education, and is based on your FAFSA data specifically. So I'm going to start with the federal Pell Grant. And so those are awarded to undergraduate students. So you have to be an undergraduate student who has not earned a bachelor's before in order to be eligible for the federal Pell Grant. So unlike loan, the federal Pell Grant does not have to be repaid. The maximum for this year was $7,395 is the maximum max Pell that students are eligible for, and it does range. So you can get the maximum. There's a minimum Pell Award, and it is going to be based on your FAFSA form. Some they're going to look to see first, are you meeting a certain poverty guideline, and if you are, you may qualify for maximum Pell. If not, then they will look to they'll calculate your SAI, and based on that SAI will depend on if you're eligible for a federal Pell Grant. There's more details on there, but that is a grant that doesn't have to be repaid, and that's the number one thing when people are filling out the FAFSA form. They are looking to see if they qualify for a federal Pell Grant. If you qualify for a federal Pell Grant, some schools, not some schools, schools are also have what's called the Federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, also known as because we love our acronyms, FSEOG or CEOG, some schools call it. With FSEOG, that is also considered campus-based funding. So similar to federal work study, if you want to be considered for this funding that we get that is extremely limited, again, you're filling out your FAFSA form as early as possible, definitely by our priority deadline, definitely submitting all the documentation that we're requesting as soon as possible so you can be part of that first round. Because like federal work study, we are given it a limited amount, and unfortunately, we cannot offer it to all of our students. So we try to divvy it out based on the availability of funding. The maximum award that you can get for federal LCOG is $4,000 for the year. That is the cap set by the Department of Education. And then there's a minimum of $100. So it ranges depending on the financial need and depending on our financial, the allocations that we get from the Department of Education. But please make sure that you complete your FAFSA form on time, so at least to be considered for these campus-based funds. So also part of financial aid. So I'm talking specifically for undergraduate students. This is a loan. It's a student loan in the student's name, and it's based on what the student qualifies for as far as it's under their name. It's based on them being an undergraduate student. One question that we get is, what is the maximum that students can borrow as far as these federal loans? And so you'll see that based on their grade level will determine how much they're eligible for. So first year students are eligible for 55, second year students are eligible for 65, and then juniors and seniors are 75. What is subsidized versus what is unsubsidized is going to vary depending on your need, but there is a maximum set for subsidized as far as, so freshmen, the max out of that 5,500 that can be subsidized is 3,500, sophomores is 4,500, and juniors and seniors are 5,500. That's the max that it can be in subsidized loan. So if you get your financial aid award notification and you are a freshman and you see that you are awarded a 3,500 subsidized loan, know that that is the maximum subsidized loan that freshmen can borrow. The difference between subsidized and unsubsidized loan, I've realized I've been using that and I haven't quite defined it yet, so I apologize. So subsidized is considered a need-based loan. So students, they have to be enrolled in a degree program and they have to be enrolled in at least 6 credits. So something to keep in mind, that in order to be eligible for these loans, you do not need to be enrolled full-time. You only need to be enrolled in at least 6 credits. So that's another common misconception that students and families may not understand, is that you do not need to be full-time in order to be eligible for these federal loans. It's just 6 credits. For the subsidized loan, while you're enrolled in at least 6 credits and during that 6-month grace period that you get after you graduate, the Department of Education is paying that interest in school. So first year freshman, let's just say you take out that 3,500 subsidized loan, you qualify for it, you take it out. When you go to graduate, if you don't take out any other loans and that's all you take out, that loan is still going to be 3,500 because the Department of Education was paying that interest while you're in school. One question that we get is, well, when do I start repaying these loans? For the federal loans, students don't go into repayment until 6 months after they graduate or stop attending at least part-time. So as I said, the subsidized loan, if you take it out your freshman year and that's all you take out, that 3,500 remains 3,500. There was no interest on it. On the other side, the direct unsubsidized loan, is the government is not paying the interest while the student's in school. They do have calculators if you're wondering how much it's going to cost and how much it's going to be at the end of the loan. When you do accept these loans, you are required to also complete what's called an entrance counseling. In that entrance counseling, it allows you to put calculators so you can see that if you were to take out an unsubsidized loan with interest, on average around what your monthly payments are going to be and how much is going to accrue in interest. And so I highly suggest that if you do take a loan, pay attention when you're doing the entrance counseling, because those questions can be answered. And then another big question that we get is, well, what is the interest rate for this loan? So they have not released the interest rates for the 2026-27 academic year. Typically those come out, I'm gonna say like May-ish if we're lucky, maybe June. But for this year, for the subsidized and unsubsidized loan for the undergraduate loans, the interest rate is 6.39%. Another question that we get is, well, if my federal loan, if my students' federal loans are not enough to cover my students' education, what other options do I have? So it's called filling the gap. And so with that gap, there is an option for parents to borrow the federal direct plus loan. One of the big changes, and I have it highlighted here, is that for the 26-27, the maximum that a parent can borrow for the academic year is 20,000, is 20,000 for the year. And so it's really kind of important to keep that in mind when you are looking to help, fill that gap, that there is going to be a limit going forward for new parent borrowers for the parent plus loan, because they do have a cap on it now. But going back to what the parent plus loan is that it is a loan for a parent to can apply for, to take out to help pay for their students' education. Eligibility is not based on financial need, but it does require a credit check. It's not necessarily a credit check where they're looking at your debt to income ratio. They're not looking at how close you are to retirement. They're not looking at, do you have any other loans out? What they are looking at is, are you in what's called like, I can't, oh my goodness, my brain just froze. Do you have adverse credit? Ooh, that was bad. So are you like in foreclosure? Did you file for bankruptcy? Those kind of things. They're looking for negative things on your credit report. So mostly it's if you are in foreclosure, if you would know, for lack of better words. But they're not looking at, we have students whose parents may not have any income. Maybe they're only on Social Security and they still will qualify for this loan. So it's really important to know that it is a credit-based loan, but it's not your typical debt to income ratio type loan that you're applying for. If in fact a parent applies for a loan for this loan and they get denied, if they get denied, they basically have three options. One, they can appeal the decision. Maybe there's something on their credit report that, oh, I just paid that off yesterday, here's proof that I paid it off, and they'll take another look. So you can appeal the decision. Another option is you can get an endorser, also known as a cosigner. So the parent can have someone who basically is saying, yep, I understand that if they don't repay this loan, I will repay it. That's another option. The third option that parents have is that if they're denied, the student can then get what's called an additional unsubsidized loan. But it's important to remember that with that unsubsidized loan, they do limit the amount that students can borrow. And so for first and second year students, the max is going to be 4,000 for the year. And then the third and fourth year, the max that they can borrow is 5,000 for the year. And then, as I mentioned, they haven't released the interest rates yet, but for this year, the interest rate is 8.94%. So with all of that, if maybe you still have a gap, or as a parent, you are choosing not to take out a parent plus loan, or maybe you're an independent student and you can't do the parent plus loan. Another option that parents and students have, as far as loan options that are out there, are private educational loans. These private educational loans are not offered through the school. They are not part of the federal government. They are just that, they are private, from private entities. They're a private source. So we do say, to maximize, the availability of funding, you want to make sure that you're doing your FAFSA form first. You want to make sure that you're looking to see what other options are out there. But with the private loans, they are out there. There are different things that you want to look at. So when you're applying for them, there's different borrowing incentives, interest rates. You want to be mindful, are you applying for a loan that's fixed versus variable? We by law can't tell you exactly what loan to apply for, but what we can do is that we can take loans that students have applied for before, and we can put them on our website and have an awesome thing where you can compare them against each other. So you can go to our website. We have what's called Elm Select, and you can, choose a couple of lenders and they'll put them side by side. So you as a family can see which loan is going to be the best option for you. Some things to keep in mind if you're looking at those private loans is, one, you want to make sure, is the interest rate fixed or is it variable? You want to look, am I required to make payments right away, or will they defer it? Do I have to make interest only payments, or will that get deferred as well? These are some things you want to just make sure you're being mindful of when you're applying for these loans. And then another thing to keep in mind is 99.9% of the time, because these are new students coming directly out of high school, or you're a new borrower, you 99% of the time, you are going to be required to have a cosigner. That cosigner does not have to be a parent, but it does have to be based on you have to have a credit worthy cosigner in order to get these loans. So just keep that in mind. And as I said, on our website, we have a great resource that you can kind of compare them against each other. And as always, we do this for a living. Any questions that you may have, we're happy to help guide you in the right direction and let you know what options are available. So the big question that we get are scholarships. How do I apply for scholarships? How does Stony Brook do scholarship? What options do I have? So institutional scholarships are another source of financial aid. So it's, as I mentioned in my slide before. So here at Stony Brook, all incoming freshmen are considered for our freshman merit-based scholarships. So if you apply, your application gets looked at as a whole. It's a holistic review to see what scholarship you may qualify for. It is important to know that since all of the students who are admitted to Stony Brook are all high academically achieving students, scholarships are very, very competitive here at Stony Brook, and our funding is extremely limited. So these merit-based scholarships are not need-based scholarships, so we do not require you to fill out the FAFSA form to be considered for these scholarships, for these merit-based scholarships. However, we do recommend that you apply for the FAFSA form. I'm going to go over the next slide. Some donor-based scholarships may be based on need and require a FAFSA form, but specifically for our merit-based scholarships for our incoming freshmen, everyone is looked at on the admission process to see what if you do qualify for a scholarship. On the other hand, there are scholarships that may require a separate application. We do try to send out notifications via Slate if we feel you may fit the criteria. So one of the big things, if there's anyone from Riverhead High School, we just had some colleagues that were just there. There's a very specific scholarship for Riverhead High School students. If you have not heard about it and you are from Riverhead, you didn't go to the course. You didn't go to their workshop that they just had. I highly recommend take a look at that. There's some for students attending James Madison High School in the city. So there's different scholarship donors those are a little bit more on the specific side. But again, if they require an application, we do tend to post that and send notifications on Slate, or we'll post it on our website, or we'll post it on our social media accounts that you can apply for. However, once you are a student here, we also have what's called Scholarship Universe. And so once you're a student and you're accepted and you what's called matriculate, you're going to get what's called a net ID and password. Using that net ID and password, you can then have access to our Scholarship Universe page. And so what we say is students who are interested in looking for scholarships, for additional scholarships, you can review these opportunities on Scholarship Universe. And what Scholarship Universe does, it allows students to create a personalized profile. I think it starts maybe with 30, 50 questions. I'm not 100% sure of the exact number, but you can answer up to, I believe, 100 questions. And obviously the more questions you answer, the more scholarships that they can send you, because you might match with more because they have more information. And so what that does is that with that profile, it helps students match to scholarships that may be available to them. But it's important to note that you need to make sure you're creating these profiles in order to be considered for them. Some don't require an application, which is awesome. Once you're in Scholarship University, it may require you to fill out an application. Others, you'll get email notification saying, hey, looks like this scholarship opportunity just opened up. You may be eligible based on your profile. Submit the application, and it tells you kind of what opportunities out there. Another awesome thing about Scholarship Universe is that it also let you know of any external scholarships that are out there. And where I think it's awesome is that you know that it's a safe scholarship. So you know that Scholarship Universe has vetted this external scholarship. You know that it's legit and your information is definitely being safe. And so once you are a student here and you get that net ID and password, again, we don't want to break Lindsay's heart. Please make sure that you're logging on to Scholarship Universe and filling out a profile. They open up applications in all different times. So they have some applications that will open up in June. We just are getting ready to wrap up another batch of scholarship opportunities, and another batch may open up in March for students who are current students. And so it's really important to make sure that once you are a student here, if you get that net ID and password, fill out that Scholarship Universe, because there are so many dollars on the table that we don't want to be left if you may qualify. So it can't hurt. So make sure you do that. All right, home stretch. So this is the part where I say, if you are not a New York resident, if you're from out of state, feel free to go grab your cup of coffee, check your TikTok. This is specifically for New York State students. So New York State has what's called a tuition assistance program, and it's done through Higher Education Services Corporation. So that is where you apply. So you will do your FAFSA form first. After you do your FAFSA application, there is a link that says click your state application here. If you miss it, They'll send you an email letting you know that you can now apply for state aid. If in fact you see it, it'll take you directly to the TAP website where you can start applying. And so, what is TAP? So, it stands for the Tuition Assistance Program. It's the largest New York grant program, and it helps eligible New York residents attending in state schools. So, you have to be New York resident and attending a school within New York. And it's based on the New York State taxable income. I believe it's at 125,000. You may qualify for some award. It does range from the $1,000 all the way up to the 5665 as far as the award amounts, and it's based on that New York State taxable income, and that's line 37 of your New York State tax return. Believe it or not, I've been looking at them for the past almost 15, almost 17 years. So it's line 37 of your tax return. If it's under 125,000, I hope to see you applying for that TAP application. Again, we don't want to break Lindsay's heart. It is important to know that it is a tuition specific award, and that so it can only go towards tuition. And then you must complete the FAFSA form first in order to complete the TAP application. And then also you need to complete a separate application. We'll send reminders. Some students, they do the FAFSA application and then they forget to do the TAP application. We will send reminders to students if we feel that you might qualify for it, but it's really important to get that application filled out as soon as possible. On top of that, so once you complete your TAP application, New York State has so many different scholarships and grants that they offer. I'm only going over a very select few. I advise going to their website and looking at all the different opportunities that they have. But one of the other scholarships that they do have is the New York State Scholarships for Academic Excellence, and it's awarded to outstanding graduates who registered from registered New York State high schools, and their awards are based on their certain regions exams. So in this case, you would want to talk to your guidance counselor and see if your regents exams qualify you for this award. And it's something that they would have to send to New York State, and they review that. But again, it starts with completing the TAP application, FAFSA form, TAP application. So while you may not qualify for anything from New York State, from TAP, you may not qualify for anything from FAFSA form. If you are looking for this award, you have to still complete those two forms. So keep that in mind. Another big thing that we get here at Stony Brook is the New York State Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics Incentive Program, also known as, because we love our acronyms, as STEM. So the New York STEM Award Incentive Program, it provides full CUNY tuition scholarships for the top 10% of students. It's important to understand that this is one of those scholarships that do have a contract attached to it. So yes, you can get it's tuition, it's not fees, so you can get full tuition, and it's up to you can get it for the 4 years for your undergraduate degree, but you are signing a contract saying that you are not only going to live within New York for 5 years, but you're also going to be in the STEM field. And so it's really, really important that you're understanding that is a contract that you're signing, because if you move out of state, you end up not getting a degree in the STEM field, you end up not getting working in the STEM field. It does turn into an unsubsidized loan. So just keep that in mind. When you're applying for it, it requires a separate application for you to apply. So again, if you're applying for this, you're doing the you're doing the FAFSA form, you're doing the TAP application, and then you're also doing the STEM incentive application. Quick question that we get, it's not on my slide, but if they have the VTA award. So that's for eligible combat veterans matriculated at an undergraduate institution. You may also qualify for a New York State award for your studies that can go towards your tuition. It's important to know that you cannot get, if you have a full TAP award, you're not also going to get a full STEM award. I do not believe, because they're both tuition specific, and STEM is considered a last dollar, so you cannot get both. So it's important to keep in mind. Another huge scholarship, the application is not available yet. So this is one of the tricky ones that you have to be mindful. You can log on to their website and put your email address, and they'll send you an email when the application becomes available. The tricky part now is that they're going to open up the application for students who are applying in the spring. So it might be even too early to put your name on that list, because they haven't even opened it up for students attending spring of 2026 yet. But with the Excelsior Scholarship, so it currently is a program that covers tuition for eligible, for SUNY and CUNY students, for families who earned $125,000 or less. So adjusted gross income is what they go by. The adjusted gross income is what they're going to look at. And it's considered a last dollar award. And so what's really, really important to understand is that if you are a full Pell recipient, if you are a full TAP recipient, you may qualify for Excelsior, but you're not going to get a dollar amount. And the reason for that is Excelsior was designed for families, for students who are not already receiving a type of scholarship or grant that can cover their tuition. So Pell, if you qualify for that maximum federal Pell Grant, you're likely not going to qualify for a dollar amount for Excelsior because it can only go towards tuition. And right now, the maximum the tuition for the year for Stony Brook is 70/70. So it's 35/35 per semester. Again, if you're qualified for the maximum Pell Grant, you're not going to qualify for a dollar amount. So keep that in mind. And then another thing that we want to make sure that we're transparent about and understanding is that this too is also a contract that you're signing, indicating that you're planning on living in the state of New York. You're working and living in the state of New York, so it doesn't have to be in a STEM field, but you're living for the number of years that you have received the award. So just keep in mind, it's a contract that you're signing, and the application is not available, but we do try to remind students if we feel that you're eligible for it, we'll send you a notification, we'll put an estimate on your award notification, but it does require a separate application. So just keep that in mind as well. So many applications. That's why I say an Excel spreadsheet is the way to go, because there's just so much. Oh, I'm almost done. This is great. Got 10 minutes for questions. So one of the other things I like to end on is that we understand that stuff happens, for a lack of better words, right? We understand that, for the 2026-27 FAFSA form, that is going to be based on 2024. Well, I'm here to tell you a lot can change in 2 years. We understand that. We all know COVID happens, things can happen. And so what the Department of Education allows us to do is they allow us to, in certain situations, we can use either projected income, we can use last year's income, we can use different income too if it represents the student situation better. It is important to understand that all we can do is take that income, plug it onto the FAFSA form, and see if it creates, it allows you to have a different, either a Pell Grant, or I like the smiley face, it lets you allow you to have a Pell Grant, it allows you maybe to get a subsidized loan, but that's about it. And so one of the stories that I use, and if you've heard me talk before, I say it over and over, had a situation one time where there was a family, they were making $500,000. Good job, good stuff. However, parent lost their job, and then they went down to only making $200,000. While that is so significant, I can only imagine losing that kind of income, living a lifestyle in a certain way, having that, maybe that sense of security, and then losing $300,000 income. What are you going to do? Unfortunately, when we plug that into the FAFSA form, that's not going to change a whole lot of what the student is eligible for. But we are here to help navigate. We will tell you about the different resources that might be out there, but know that, for these special circumstances, it does require a conversation. Our advisor who works on them really talks directly with the parents and families, and we're happy to have those conversations. Typically, we will start the process. You can probably call us. You want to get your award notification first, because you want to see what age you're eligible for. Some students, they may have lost the income, but maybe they already qualify for Max Pell, so there's not much more we can do. So I advise, wait, get your financial aid award letter. If in fact you don't think it represents, you can always give us a call. We're happy to have those conversations with you, because we know that there's just so much that can go on. So with that, I'm a born and raised New Yorker. I said it really fast. I know that I talk a mile a minute. So here's some contact information. Feel free to email us. We have a great team. I got about 9 minutes for questions. What do you got, Amanda?
So if I am a National Merit finalist or semifinalist, are there specific scholarships I might be eligible for?
Yep, and so that's a really great thing. So yeah, so if you are a National Merit semifinalist and finalist, we get that information on a registry. And so if you're on that registry, we will you'll get that notification when you get your scholarship award notifications from us. If in fact, let's just say you weren't on the registry, if you provide documentation that you are finalist or semifinalist, again, yes, there are those scholarship dollars that are available to those students as well, on top of those that are considered for the merit-based scholarships as well.
So that could be in addition.
In addition, yep, in addition to, yeah, it's in addition to our like presidential scholarships that we offer.
And is that the same if, let's say, I'm the valedictorian or salutatorian?
Great question. Yeah, valedictorians and salutatorians, those are also offered additional scholarships. So there are students, and this is where I say it's so competitive. We have students who qualify for presidential scholarships, and then they're national merit finalists, and on top of that, they're a valedictorian. Yes, those are 3 separate scholarships that students can qualify for.
Thank you. And so because you don't use the CSS profile, are you going to miss any information that you might need about me?
No, so we wouldn't miss any information because the merit-based scholarships are based on just that, your merit. And so we're not missing that because they're looking at your academic, they're looking at the academic record. National merit, you're going to have the documentation. So you're not missing out on those dollars. And then as far as the federal aid, you're doing your FAFSA form. That's going to determine your federal aid, state aid is going to determine your state aid. So no, you're not going to miss out on anything.
Let's see. We have, let me go back to the top. Oh, just as a note to everyone, if you want to rewatch any parts of Lindsay's presentation, this will be available sometime next week on the Stony Brook University admissions YouTube page. I just wanted to remember to let you know, because I know sometimes it's hard to absorb all of this amazing information and then remember what you have to do and how to make your spreadsheet that Lindsay asked you to make. It's like homework, Lindsay.
It is, yes, I give homework. My kids don't like it either.
Um,
I will add, I know that we had a question previously that was submitted, and I just want to make sure I touch base with it. If you are a veteran, or if you're a veteran and you're planning on using your Chapter 33 benefits, that is done directly through our Veterans Affairs office, and they will work with you. It's basically a shared spreadsheet. They let us know what your percentage is, and then from there we would be posting your award. And typically it doesn't happen until later, but to answer the question is you working directly with with our Veterans Affairs office.
oh, that's great. Um, does academic performance play a part specifically in loans and grants, or just scholarships?
Just for your scholarship. So for the federal loans are going to be based strictly on the FAFSA form. You do have to maintain satisfactory academic progress to keep those loans. So maintain a 2.0, complete your degree in 100, on time basically, and you have to earn a certain number of credits. If you really want to know, 67% you have to earn. But as far as initial eligibility, they're not academics is not looked at for loans.
And a question we get a lot in the admissions office actually is, if I filled out my common application or my SUNY application, I submitted everything and I checked off the wrong area about whether I wanted to be considered for financial aid,
Oh.
do I have to change that on my application, or can I just go ahead with the FAFSA and know that I'll be considered for aid?
So if you're looking for financial aid, just do the FAFSA form. For here at Stony Brook, do the FAFSA form. We will let you know what federal aid you're eligible for. Do the TAP application. They're going to let you know what you're eligible for. So if you did miss that question, no, for here at Stony Brook, you do not need to go back to that.
So this is
Emojis popping up.
so a question about do most students most students expect to get partial aid as opposed to full room board tuition fees covered?
Yeah, so I would say as a state institution with our tuition already being lower and our value is there, our scholarships are not, yeah, the room and board is really going to be, a lot of our students are either paying out of pocket, they're looking to financially. A great way to help with your room and board. Sorry, I had to. I see the 6 7s come up, guys. I got a 13-year-old at home. The room and board, a lot of students, you can become an RA. And if you become an RA, then yeah, your room and your meals are paid for. And so that is something that a way, if you're looking to have those room and board fees covered, an RA is a great opportunity to do so.
That's great. And if you qualify for work study, are there different types of things you can do? Do you get assigned to a job on campus, or do you have to still apply for a position?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, yes, you would have to find a position on campus. What the Career Center does is that they do have a portal that allows students to look to see what jobs are out there, and they also have a career fair the first week of classes, I believe, or maybe the second week of classes, so students can go, and all the departments, the majority of the departments that are hiring, are there to help see what, let you know that they're available, and you can sign up to get interviewed to see if you can get the position in their office.
And Lindsay, in your vast experience in financial aid, are there any kind of final words of encouragement or wisdom or calm that you can share before we leave?
Yeah. So my biggest thing is please do not hesitate to give us a call. We are the source. We are working with the different agencies. We're working with the Department of Education. We're working with the institution. We are the ones that know the answers. And so please, if you hear from a friend that this happened here, or you hear from a friend that they qualified for this, do not make an assumption. Give us a call. We love, love, love helping. That's what we're here for. We have all of our star people here today, and we love just helping students. We love answering their questions. We love working them through the process. We have people who are parents who are going through it with their students. We have ex-students that happen to be working with us. So it really is important to just reach out to us. We are here. We applaud ourselves. You email us Monday through Friday, you're going to get an answer typically within, I would 12 hours. We pride ourselves on making sure we are there to answer the phones. Our wait time's pretty low this time of year. I think like on average, our wait time was like a minute last month. So definitely do not hesitate to reach out to us. We are here to help you.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. I know that I say this every time, but literally every time I listen to this presentation, it's somewhat different. There's new information. It's really excellent that you're able to provide so much great content for us. And I wish everyone the best of luck with their senior year, their college applications, filling out all of these forms and getting ready for the next adventure. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day, and we wish you well. Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
Bye.
Lindsay.
Have a good
Bye.
one.